Hello, Earthmen and Earthwomen. Today I'm going to do a quick review of the Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury is exactly what it sounds like. It is a collection of loosely connected short stories about humans colonizing Mars. These stories are all written in the 1940s and 1950s by Ray Bradbury, most of them separately, and then they were all collected into a single volume, which is this book right here. So this edition, the Martian Chronicles, was first published in 1950. It has since been revised and reprinted um, a number of times. The version I read, and the one that I will be referring to today, is the Harper Perennial Modern Classics edition, which was first published in 2011. First, I want to talk about the cover design. This particular version, I think it looks really good. I like the typography. The illustrations are very clean and simple, with a circle shape that looks kind of like a sunflower or something, some kind of flower. But also has the Mars imagery inside of it. The colors on the entire cover are really nice and beautiful. I also appreciate the treatment of the author name in the circle there. Those kind of simple design choices should not go unnoticed, so I definitely noticed that. And also the typography inside the book also looks great with ample spacing that allows for easy reading. Alright, so about the book itself, there is an overarching narrative throughout the thread of all the stories of humans landing on and colonizing Mars. So obviously in the process they will encounter Martians. I hope that's not a spoiler. So they encounter Martians and the Martian civilizations that they have built. It's pretty soft science. There's not a lot of hard technology or over scientific explanation of things. So actually one can even argue if the book itself is even considered science fiction at all. Um, Ray Bradbury himself didn't think it was. He considered it more a collection of stories about the drama of the human experience. But whether or not you consider it science fiction or not, I'm not going to argue. But definitely there are for sure some different genres here at play, including military stories, family drama, revenge tales, maybe, and even a touch of the paranormal. There are also many themes that are touched upon here, such as obviously colonization. So when the humans land on Mars, they will spread civilization. I don't know. So like I mentioned, there's also first contact. They explore ideas relating to capitalism, atomic bombs, and nuclear war, and also more personal themes like grief and loss and nostalgia and loneliness. Each story itself is unique and captivating in its own right, but it all fits together very nicely into the overall narrative. So that's what I really loved about the book, was that the stories are all simple to read and they were engaging. So you didn't feel like you were losing interest at any point. Each vignette had its own tone, its own message. Some of them were inspiring, some of them were touching, some were more disturbing, and some of them were just hauntingly beautiful. My favorite of the stories by far was one called Usher 2. It is a obvious reference to the story The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, who by the way I'm a huge fan of. And so the story itself is an homage to Poe. It references a lot of his most popular stories in this narrative. The characters reference stories as well. I won't spoil either of the stories, but the main character plays out some of the uh, scenes from Poe's stories here to kind of a funny effect at some points. The story touches on censorship and the gradual dumbing down of literature and also society itself. If that sounds familiar to you, that would be because of Bradbury's arguably most famous novel, Fahrenheit 451, which includes some of the same themes. So obviously there are some very clear similarities between the two. Obviously, both stories are completely different, but they do contain some of the same themes. And if you've read Fahrenheit 451, you'll um, get a sense of deja vu, I think. But as for my most favorite, as for my most appreciated part of the Martian Chronicles, it was the prose of Bradbury. If you've read any of his stuff before, you know that his prose is just the best, like butter dripping its silky, soft smoothness across the plains of wherever it spreads. For myself, the only other novel by Bradbury I have read so far is Fahrenheit 451. And admittedly, while I didn't enjoy the book, I felt that the prose there was a bit too much. I laid it on a bit too thick, I thought. I would have preferred uh, a deeper story, a longer story, with less descriptiveness. But here in this book, I think that the elements play perfectly with each other. There's just enough story in each of the tales to get the messages across, and the prose is just dialed into perfection. But needless to say, I am very eager to dive into more of Bradbury's work. There are some novels that sound really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how they hold up, along with the two that I've read so far. As for the negatives, I mean, I can't really think of any major ones. I guess some of the darker aspects or some of the darker stories could have been taken further. As it is, most of the stories in the book follow the same airy, poetic kind of tone, whereas some of the stories do get a little more twisted and a little more disturbing. And so maybe if those had a more intense feel, they might have a bigger impact, and it might make for a really gripping story, or it may throw off the cohesiveness of the entire thing. I don't know. Maybe it would create one of those tonal inconsistencies that YouTubers hate so much. Also, the ending kind of surprised me. I don't mean that there is a twist in the final story or in the last page or anything. It's just that the latter third of the book goes in kind of a different direction. One that I was not expecting, and one that I still don't quite understand or believe. If you've read the story, I'm sure you know what I'm referring to. If you do decide to read it, you will probably understand once you do finish it. Um, it's just kind of a weird choice that happens. That's all I can think of for negatives. So all in all, it was a really good read. I'm giving it a rating of 4.5. Some stars, numbers out of 5. So definitely give it a chance if you're into sci-fi or space or Mars or poetic writing, or if you've enjoyed any of Ray Bradbury's other work. I think if you like any of those aspects, you will definitely enjoy the Martian Chronicles. So that's all I've got then for today. So long and so forth and stuff.